When I think about what really happened, it makes me want to throw up. I was abused. I was harassed. I was violated without my consent.
I know so many who have been abused, who have been who will never testify, never.
The harassment never stopped. From the day I joined his team until the day I left Gabon.
Several people in Gabon have come forward saying they were victims of Patrick Assoumou Eyi. The well-known football coach is accused of raping and exploiting boys.
They would come into our rooms and I saw the boys being taken away. When they came back, I could tell they couldn't sleep. While we were training for the selection games, those boys were passing blood in the toilets and showers. We could see blood coming out of their palms.
He started to contact me obsessively, calling every day, sometimes late at night, and sending me sexual messages. I was just 14 at the time.
In Gabon, football and pedophilia go hand in hand. We're all told the stories. People will openly say this or that guy is a pedophile. We will make jokes about it. Make sure you don't go into the showers with so-and-so. We're laughing like it was normal.
Millions of children around the world dream of following in the footsteps of their footballing idols to become professionals, but the grim reality is that less than 0.5% will eventually actualize this dream. This imbalance in demand and supply means those in position of influence in the football world can often be the telling difference between becoming a professional or seeing your dream fade into obscurity. Meet Gabonese football mogul Patrick Assoumou Eyi, or as some might call him, football's own P. Diddy. And just like his counterpart, he's another example of the devastating effect of unchecked power. Stay tuned, because what you're about to uncover will change the way you see the beautiful game. People often say, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's a lesson we've seen proven time and time again as influential figures across industries succumb to the darker temptations of unchecked authority. Recently, headlines buzzed with accusations against Sean Diddy Combs, a music mogul whose influence and fame allegedly allowed him to exploit and manipulate others. But as shocking as it may seem, people like Diddy, people who use their influence for personal gain, with little regard for those they harm, are not exclusive to music or entertainment. Unfortunately, even the world of sports has its own figures of power gone wrong. Patrick Assoumou Eyi, popularly known as Capello, a once celebrated Gabonese football coach, held immense sway over the hopes and dreams of young footballers in his country. For those unfamiliar with Gabon, it's a small yet unique country located on the west coast of Central Africa. Gabon borders Equatorial Guinea to the northwest, Cameroon to the north, and the Republic of the Congo to the east and south. Its western edge is lined by the Atlantic Ocean, giving the country access to rich coastal resources. With a population of around 2.3 million people, Gabon is home to various Bantu ethnic groups, with the Fang as the largest, followed by groups like the Nzebi, Miene, and Obamba. Most Gabonese people live in urban areas, and the capital, Libreville, stands as the most developed city, filled with bustling marketplaces, urban life, and a blend of modern and traditional cultures. French is the official language due to Gabon's colonial history, and it remains central in government, education, and everyday interactions. Economically, Gabon heavily relies on oil exports, which have made it one of the wealthier nations in the region, at least on paper. However, the reality is that much of this wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few, leaving large parts of the rural population with limited access to basic services like healthcare, quality education, and job opportunities. In this landscape, football isn't just a sport, it's a beacon of hope. Football offers a potential pathway out of poverty and a chance at a better life, especially for young people from lower income communities. For many Gabonese youth, a career in football means not only pursuing a passion, but also a way to escape challenging socio-economic conditions. This makes Gabonese football incredibly competitive, with young talents striving to impress influential figures like Capello, who held the keys to their future in the sport. Capello began his coaching career in the early 1990s with a clear focus on developing young football talent. Youth football in Gabon operates under the Gabonese Football Federation (FEGAFOOT), which oversees football programs across various age groups. FEGAFOOT's mission has always been to promote football talent in Gabon through local leagues like La Ligue de l'Estuaire, which is Gabon's highest football division, These leagues serve as local training grounds, where players first prove their skills before setting their sights on better opportunities abroad. Capello's dedication to youth football quickly saw him rise through the ranks of Gabonese football as he built a reputation as someone who had an eye for spotting and nurturing young talent. In 2010, he was appointed as head coach of Gabon's under-17 national team, a role that put him in charge of scouting the country's most promising talents. In this role, he held a remarkable level of control over Gabon's youth football. He wasn't just a coach, he was the gatekeeper, the man who could decide the fate of any aspiring footballer aiming to climb the ranks. His responsibilities included scouting, training, and mentoring young players, with the power to either open doors or leave players on the sidelines. In a country where football is often seen as a path to a better life, his influence was immense. For many young players, getting his approval could mean the difference between a career in football or fading into obscurity. For the most part, Capello enjoyed a successful career. After leaving his role as Gabon's under-17 coach, he was once again promoted to an even more powerful position as the technical director of the Gabonese league. This role further solidified his authority over Gabonese football development. Now, he wasn't just impacting youth players, he was also overseeing the entire footballing structure in Gabon. However, everything would change in December 2021 when a British news outlet published an article that would dismantle his reputation and reveal the darker side of his control over Gabonese football.
J'ai parlé au président de la fédération. J'ai été voir le ministre des Sports. Moi, j'ai fait plusieurs interventions dans plusieurs télévisions, plusieurs radios au Gabon. Sans suite. Personne n'a pris en considération ce que je disais.
For many years, alleged cases of how Capello sexually assaulted young players were reported to the Gabonese footballing body Fegafoot and even to the local media, but it was always brushed under the carpet and nothing was done about it, mostly because victims were too afraid to testify against him for fear of losing their place in the team and even their lives. However, everything came crumbling down in December 2021 when British news outlet The Guardian released an explosive investigative report that sent shockwaves across the footballing community. After many years of suppression, the scandal finally broke, casting a huge shadow not just on Capello but on Gabonese football. The report detailed disturbing allegations from 30 victims who claimed that Capello had exploited his authority to sexually abuse them, an alleged pattern of sexual abuse that spanned 3 decades. According to the claims, these abuses began before he served as the head coach for Gabon's under-17 national team and continued into his role as the technical director of the Gabonese league. One detail stood out among the accusations. Capello would reportedly lure his victims to his home, a place he chillingly referred to as the Garden of Eden. While this name might evoke images of the tranquility of the biblical garden, for the young boys who entered those doors, it concealed a much darker reality. These young boys who traveled to Libreville from neighboring villages carrying not only their dreams, but also the hopes of their family, quickly came to realize that the requirement to actualize their dreams went beyond just talent and determination. They would also have to pay a costlier price. A former Gabonese youth player recalled how Capello took a special interest in him during his time in the youth system. Capello would often masturbate while spying on the boys as they took their bath.
One time, me and another player were having a shower. That's when I saw Capello. He was watching us. He had his hands down his trousers. I got really scared. He started to contact me obsessively, calling every day, sometimes late at night, and sending me sexual messages. I was just 14 at the time. I was terrified. The harassment never stopped.
Capello forced his players into sexual relationships with a clear and brutal message: comply or lose your spot on the team. This was the heartbreaking price some of the boys had to pay for a chance at professional football. He also often journeyed to the most impoverished areas of Gabon to scout players, boys who saw football as their only chance at a better life, thereby taking advantage of poverty and lack of proper education to sexually exploit them. For these boys, the national team was a dream turned nightmare, and compliance was the hidden price for admission. Other footballers who trained at the Libreville Academy during Capello's time as the under-17 coach also recalled similar tales of grooming and abuse. As one of them recalled, "He was very nice to me, but every time I saw him, he told me I was beautiful. One day, he told me that some of the players gave him masturbation it was like he was sending me a message. Just like Diddy, Capello was not alone in his crimes. In fact, he was just the pimp head of a gang of perverts in a rotten system. He didn't just sleep with the boys, he also pimped them out to his colleagues. While Diddy held freak-offs and forced his victims to perform recorded sexual acts with his colleagues and used the promises of better career opportunities as leverage to keep them compliant, Capello, on the other hand, held what was called the presence of mind rituals, where he and his colleagues would take turns on the boys. This ritual, according to him, was held as some sort of coming-of-age ritual for the boys in his team. It was meant to make his players calm and more mentally resilient on the pitch. Those who underwent this ritual were guaranteed a place on the team, while those who refused were dropped from the team.
We were staying at a hotel the day before an important international game with the junior national team. There were 3 coaches there. Capello asked if I was a believer. I told him I was not, because I don't go to church. He said I was missing something and that I needed a spiritual father to give me presence of mind. He said they could see when I played football that I was empty inside. He then told me, you can get the presence of mind when a man like myself sleeps with you, like you will sleep with a woman. All of a sudden, I realized that I was alone in a room with 3 men and I started to shake. I was so much afraid. Capello then told me that it would not take very long, that there were 3 of them in the room and they'll each have a go with me and that it will not hurt. He said that I would always be selected to play for the national team afterwards and that other players in my team had done it too. I didn't know where the idea came from. It just dawned on me to tell them that I wanted to use the toilet. They were hesitant at first, but one of them said they should just let me go and come back. And I went back to my room. I couldn't look my roommate in the eyes. I went to the bathroom and I didn't leave the room again. And they never came to call me back. After that day, I was never again selected to play for the youth national team.
After the Guardian's expose, the matter became an issue of public interest, finally catching the attention of FIFA, who launched an investigation into the disturbing allegations. By May 2022, FIFA's Ethics Committee concluded its inquiry, issuing a lifetime ban on Capello, barring him from all footballing activities. In 2014, Brice Makaya, a former Gabonese striker who represented his country during the 1996 Africa Cup of Nations and later served as an assistant coach under Capello for the under-17 national team, raised serious concerns regarding allegations of sexual abuse against Capello. Despite the gravity of these claims, they received minimal attention from the Gabonese Football Federation.
Parce que moi j'ai été à l'intérieur de ce système et j'ai dénoncé à plusieurs fois. J'ai dénoncé même auprès du bureau fédéral à plusieurs fois.
Capello successfully ran his cult in Gabonese football for over 3 decades, having access to over 50 boys every year. If you do the maths, that would be about 1,500 boys in 30 years. All these happened under the watchful eyes of the Gabonese Football Federation, even becoming an open secret at some point, with many reports of Capello's crimes reaching the desk of Fegafoot. But nothing was done about it. Instead, the Federation jumped to Capello's defense, dismissing the claims as false and without evidence. He was never investigated or sanctioned. Instead, he was promoted to the post of the technical director of the Gabonese League, giving him more power and influence over Gabonese football. This backing from the establishment only made it even more difficult for victims to further testify against him, as they feared it would only endanger them.
The only reason I can speak to you is because I am no longer in Gabon. Those who are still there cannot testify. Their lives are in danger. They will be targeted afterwards. I know so many who have been abused, who have been who will never testify, never.
When scandals like this emerge, they are rarely exposed by those in power. Instead, these stories often remain hidden, buried under layers of influence, intimidation, and deliberate silence. For organizations, the motivation to shield influential figures is often financial and reputational. Publicly acknowledging allegations against them could jeopardize the organization's image and disrupt lucrative partnerships. So, rather than confront the allegations, institutions often find it easier to suppress them, hoping the public remains in the dark. It was only after The Guardian broke the scandal in 2021 that it became a serious matter of international interest. The Global Union of Footballers FIFPro launched an investigation into the matter before submitting a formal complaint to football's governing body FIFA, which then forced the hands of the Gabonese Federation to finally open an investigation on Capello. Also, the Gabonese government got involved, opening a criminal investigation against Capello and the president of the Gabonese Football Federation, Mr. Alien Mungengi, as he was accused of turning a blind eye to years of abuse. As expected, Mungengi denied this allegation, stating that Capello had long been under investigation, just that the federation never wanted it to be a matter of public interest.
On vous accuse d'avoir gardé le silence. Est-ce le cas?
Bien, je crois que c'est des accusations fortuites. La fédération n'a pas gardé le silence. La fédération n'a pas voulu communiquer comme ça se passe aujourd'hui dans les réseaux sociaux et autres. Mais nous sommes passés dans l'action. Je disais tantôt que nous avons saisi la commission d'éthique de la fédération qui a ouvert une enquête.
Brace Makaya recounted a troubling incident that occurred during an under-17 match in Ethiopia while he was serving as an assistant to Capello. He presented Mungengi with a young player's phone, which contained unsettling messages from an anonymous account that he believed was Capello, telling the player he had a nice mouth and that he wanted to kiss it. According to Makaya, he was once again told it wasn't enough proof of abuse, and his concerns were dismissed. The following weeks after the scandal broke, there were desperate calls for Mungengi to resign from his role as the president of the Football Federation, but Mungengi stuck to his guns, and in April 2022, he would go on to be re-elected as the federation's president. After months of investigation, Capello was finally arrested by local authorities in Ntoum, a town about 40 kilometers from Gabon's capital Libreville. For charges of pedophilia, he was placed in police custody, pending further investigation. He would, however, plead his innocence, claiming he was only a victim of the malicious intent of his enemies. I am not the man described to you, which is why in your investigations you will only find embittered, jealous people who live in their imagination. What is happening in Gabonese football? Can it be summed up by me alone? And he was right, he wasn't the only one in the system who exploited players. As investigation began to intensify, Gabonese authorities arrested 2 other coaches. Gabonese club Tout Puissant Akwembe's head coach Orphée Mikala and Trifel Mabika, both of whom were also charged for rape and assault of minors. In the weeks following Capello's arrest, the president of the Gabonese Football Federation, Alien Mungengi, was also arrested and charged with failing to denounce crimes of pedophilia. Finally, his years of turning a blind eye to Capello's crime had caught up with him.
I believe that when it comes to Mr. Mungengi's responsibility, you can look at it in 2 ways. Either he's incompetent, because he should know what's happening in Gabonese football as president of the federation, or is guilty of having covered years of abuse.
Despite Mungengi's arrest by local authorities, he was neither suspended by FIFA nor by the African football governing body CAF. As a result, he still held footballing powers and governed the affairs of the federation from prison. This went against FIFA's standard practices, as individuals under criminal investigation are always provisionally suspended. It was also reported that CAF sent a letter to the Gabonese authorities querying Mungengi's arrest, and a few months later, CAF President Patrice Motsepe paid Mungengi a condolence visit in prison.
I know a lot of players were abused. If those boys see the president of CAF, supported by FIFA, comes to Gabon to visit Mungengi in prison, but doesn't speak one word in support of victims about what is happening, what should they make of that? How should they feel? It is horrible.
After spending 6 months in prison, Mungengi was provisionally granted bail while investigation went on, and 3 weeks later there would be public outrage when Mungengi was pictured exchanging pleasantries with CAF President Patrice Motsepe and FIFA President Giorgino Infantino at the launch of the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. Mungengi would go on to play a crucial role in re-electing Infantino for another term as FIFA president, and in July 2023, Mungengi was also elected into CAF's executive committee, one of the highest ranks in African football. As expected, the actions of CAF and FIFA were interpreted by many as being complicit, leading to further outrage. When CAF's Secretary General Veron Masengo was asked about the lack of sanctions, he insinuated that Mungengi was innocent until he is proven guilty.
Okay, so until they find him guilty, CAF and FIFA cannot do anything else but support him.
We have to support the principle of
innocence until proven guilty?
Exactly,
Okay.
of course.
Although the president of Gabonese football roams free, Capello is remanded in prison. If found guilty, he could face a minimum of 30 years in prison. In the end, the stories of Capello and Sean Diddy Combs serve as stark reminders of the dangers of unchecked power and influence. When those in authority are allowed to operate without accountability, the vulnerable often suffer.